Every Friday night in 1972, millions of American families gathered around their consoles looking for a slice of perfection. And there she was, in the top left square of the screen, Marcia Brady. With that sun-kissed hair and that blindingly bright smile, Maureen McCormick became the gold standard for every daughter in the country. But we had no idea that when the stage lights dimmed, Maureen was returning to a home that felt more like a haunted house than a sitcom set. Behind the, "Oh my nose," the jokes were a real accident. While the world was falling in love with her, Maureen was falling into a black hole of cocaine, 3 secret abortions, and a career spiral. Tonight, we're uncovering what actually happened to Maureen McCormick, the girl who was always Marcia. Born on August 5, 1956, Maureen McCormick was a girl with striking commercial appeal in the sun-drenched sprawl of the San Fernando Valley. At the tender age of 6, Maureen was entered into the Baby Miss San Fernando Valley beauty pageant. She didn't just compete. She won the crown and also caught the attention of a talent manager who saw something special in the little girl. It didn't take long for the industry to put her to work. By 1964, an 8-year-old Maureen made her national television debut in commercials for Mattel. A bright-eyed, blonde little girl smiling flawlessly next to the brand-new Barbie and Chatty Cathy dolls. She was so good at it that by 1970, Mattel actually hired her to provide the voice for a redesigned Chatty Cathy doll. Pull the string, get a cheerful response. It was the exact dynamic Hollywood was training her for. Throughout the late 1960s, she wasn't a normal kid attending Taft High School in Woodland Hills. She was a working professional, grinding out guest spots on the heaviest hitters of the era. She appeared in 2 episodes of Bewitched, first popping up in Darren's dream as his witch child, Little Endora, and later playing Endora herself, transformed into a little girl for a Halloween episode. She bounced from soundstage to soundstage, securing roles on I Dream of Jeannie, Honey West, The Farmer's Daughter, and My 3 Sons. To the audience at home, she was a cute kid bringing magic to their living rooms. But in reality, Maureen was a child laborer, mastering the art of hitting her marks, memorizing her lines, and being exactly what the adults in the room needed her to be. Then came the turning point. In 1969, producer Sherwood Schwartz was looking for the ingredients to cast a new kind of blended family sitcom. The audition process was a grueling cattle call, with over 260 children vying for 6 spots. Schwartz was looking for a very specific, effortless radiance. When 12-year-old Maureen walked in, the search for the eldest daughter was over. She was cast as Marcia Brady. From the very first episode, the Brady Bunch wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural blueprint. That iconic opening sequence, with 9 squares arranged in a 3x3 grid, became a staple of American pop culture. Maureen was placed in that top left corner, and her soft blonde hair and bright eyes were etched permanently into the national psyche. But as Maureen stepped into the shoes of the ultimate, perfect American teenager, the line between the actress and the character began to dangerously blur. She was expected to be Marcia everywhere she went. By the early 1970s, the Brady Bunch was the ultimate American mirror, but on the Paramount lot, the reflection was heavily distorted. 6 kids were navigating puberty under a microscope, turning the studio into a chaotic, hormone-fueled classroom. The most legendary friction happened between Maureen and Eve Plum, who played Jan. The writers ruthlessly mined their real-life tension, turning genuine backstage irritation into the iconic Marcia versus Jan rivalry. Decades later, Maureen's memoir stripped away the polite network image entirely, revealing that Eve had a habit of passing gas on set and occasionally walking around completely naked, incidents Maureen witnessed multiple times. It was a far cry from the buttoned-up wholesomeness they sold on screen. In Hollywood, a star's pain is often just unbilled writing material. In 1973, Maureen was in a real-life car accident that left her with a swollen, bruised nose. Instead of halting production for America's Sweetheart, the producers leaned right into the injury. They hastily crafted an episode where Marcia takes a football to the face, birthing the legendary shrill cry, "Oh, my nose!" To this day, it remains a pillar of American pop culture. But for Maureen, it was a stark reminder that even her literal blood and bruises belonged to the Brady machine. Behind closed dressing room doors, the boundaries of this simulated family were blurring dangerously. Maureen developed a massive crush on Barry Williams, the actor playing her older brother, Greg. The chemistry was undeniably real. During one specific afternoon, the two found themselves alone in Barry's dressing room. The tension reached a fever pitch, only to be shattered by a sudden knock from a production assistant. A teenage romance popped before it could even begin. But the bizarre, almost incestuous undertones of the set didn't end there. Barry later admitted he harbored a crush on Florence Henderson, their TV mother. Meanwhile, Maureen was harboring a secret infatuation with Robert Reed, her TV father, entirely unaware at the time that he was a gay man trapped in a deeply closeted life. As the show's popularity grew, the machine squeezed every ounce of profit from its young stars. They released 4 albums and hit the road for grueling national tours. Maureen found herself singing duets with Christopher Knight, who played Peter, feeling the roar of crowds who treated them like suburban Beatles. Yet, here is the industry secret. The Brady Bunch was never a massive ratings juggernaut during its original run. It was a modest earner that only achieved its immortal cult status through endless decades of syndication reruns. When the cameras finally stopped rolling in 1974, Maureen McCormick was 19 years old. She was wealthy, famous, and seemingly holding the keys to Hollywood. But as any veteran of this town will tell you, when you spend your formative years playing a perfect illusion, reality hits like a freight train. She was left standing in the top left square of a life she no longer recognized. Maureen had played Marcia for so long that she was a stranger to herself. As she stepped off the lot, the protective bubble burst, and a horrifying buried family secret was waiting to drag her into a spiral that would leave the pristine Brady image in absolute ashes. Her home was a suffocating pressure cooker. Her mother and one of her brothers were battling severe mental illness, while her father had morphed into a rigid religious fanatic, imposing strict, faith-based expectations on the entire household. But the fatal blow to Maureen's innocence came when she unearthed the dark family secret that had been buried for generations. She discovered that her grandmother had been committed to a psychiatric institution after contracting syphilis, a disease that ravaged her mind and was tragically, unknowingly, passed down to Maureen's mother. For a girl whose entire public identity was built on untainted, wholesome American perfection, learning this truth was like a blade cutting directly through her soul. The illusion of the flawless family was shattered permanently. Unable to reconcile the impossible gap between Marcia Brady and her grim reality, Maureen plummeted into a world of relentless escapism. She sought to numb the pain with cocaine, quaaludes, and reckless abandon. Between the ages of 18 and 20, she underwent 3 abortions, a devastating series of decisions born out of a complete loss of control. In her memoir, she admitted with brutal honesty, "I lived like there was no tomorrow. Drugs made me believe everything was fine until I couldn't even recognize myself anymore." She was subconsciously trying to burn down the pristine image that had imprisoned her. But in Hollywood, word travels faster than wildfire, and the industry is notoriously unforgiving to child stars who lose their shine. The absolute climax of her downward spiral arrived on a morning she was scheduled to meet Steven Spielberg, who was casting for the blockbuster Raiders of the Lost Ark. After days of non-stop partying, Maureen showed up completely dazed, sporting dark circles and barely coherent sentences. Spielberg took one look at the crumbling icon before him and quietly handed her an orange, a silent, pitying gesture telling her to get some sugar in her blood and wake up to reality. She didn't get the part. That golden opportunity was swallowed whole by her addiction, and a producer reportedly told her with trademark industry coldness, "You'll never work in this town again." Desperate to prove she was more than just the girl next door, she fought for gritty, serious roles. She poured her heart into an audition for Midnight Express, a heavy drama about drug trafficking in a Turkish prison. She had the real-world scars to play the part perfectly. But the cruelest irony of Hollywood typecasting is that the world refuses to see your actual pain. The director looked at her and only saw Marcia Brady, not a hardened smuggler. She was rejected outright. For Maureen, it felt like the final nail in the coffin of her serious acting career. The golden girl had fallen into the abyss, and Hollywood was perfectly content to leave her in the dirt. When you have spent your entire childhood as America's property, the most terrifying thing in the world is finding someone who actually wants to know the real you. By the early 80s, Maureen McCormick was still battling the ghosts of her addiction, trying to tape the shattered pieces of her life back together. She was exhausted, and deep down, she just wanted to find someone good. The turning point came at a concert, where she spotted a man in the crowd and felt an instant, almost magnetic pull. She later admitted thinking, "That's the man I'm going to marry." His name was Michael Cummings. He was a working actor, but more importantly, he was a devout churchgoer. Desperate to cross paths with him again, Maureen started attending his church, a quiet sanctuary far removed from the cocaine-fueled parties of the Hollywood Hills. When they finally met, the most miraculous thing happened. Michael had absolutely no idea who she was. He hadn't watched the Brady Bunch. He didn't see Marcia, as he fondly remembered years later. "I didn't know who she was, but I liked what I saw." For Maureen, that ignorance was pure salvation. "It was very refreshing for me," she explained, "because he had no preconceived ideas about who I was. So it was really wonderful." But a fairy tale beginning doesn't magically erase a nightmare past. As their courtship blossomed, Maureen opened up about the chaos, the abortions, the bulimia, the drugs, and the fear. And just as she dreaded, her demons resurfaced. She relapsed. In this town, that is usually the moment the new boyfriend quietly slips out the back door. But Michael didn't run. He stayed, choosing to stand in the dark with her. They married on March 16th, 1985. Reflecting on their 4-decade union, Maureen recently confessed, "Marriage is seriously the hardest thing you can ever do. You just need to get through those times when they can make you so mad, or when you want to walk out that door, but don't." With a self-deprecating laugh, she added, "I don't know if anyone else could have taken me. Today I trust that man with my life." The early years of that marriage, however, were a battlefield. There were endless therapy sessions and interventions. At one point, she fell under the care of Dr. Eugene Landy, the controversial, manipulative therapist infamous for his control over Beach Boys genius Brian Wilson. Maureen thought Landy could fix her, but his extreme methods only deepened her emotional confusion. "I didn't know where I was going or who I was becoming," she later wrote. She realized that healing couldn't be bought from a Hollywood guru. It had to be earned, one agonizing day at a time. She walked away from Landy, relying instead on Michael's unwavering support and, eventually, antidepressants like Prozac to manage the clinical depression and paranoia that threatened to pull her under. Michael even quit his own acting career and moved into corporate sales after their daughter Natalie was born in 1989, just to provide the quiet, stable life Maureen had never known. Yet, the industry wasn't quite done exploiting her. In 1995, hoping to reclaim her own voice, Maureen poured her heart into a country music album titled "When You Get a Little Lonely." She explicitly begged her brother, who owned the record label, to keep the Brady branding far away from the project. She wanted to be heard as Maureen, the artist. But when the album hit the shelves, her heart sank. Plastered across the cover was a massive sticker that read, "Marcia, Marcia, Marcia." It was a profound betrayal. The marketing team had completely disregarded her plea for independence, weaponizing the very catchphrase that had haunted her just to sell a few extra records. The album flopped, and the message from the world was loud and clear. "We don't want your truth. We just want our Marcia back." But this time, thanks to the solid ground Michael had helped her build, the disappointment didn't destroy her. She was finally strong enough to realize that if Hollywood wouldn't let her evolve, she would just have to reinvent herself on her own terms. When the traditional doors of Hollywood are slammed in your face, the industry usually offers you one last, desperate hallway: reality television. For most former child stars, it's a graveyard. It's where you go to let the public feast on your remaining dignity. But Maureen McCormick has never been like the rest of them. By the mid-2000s, she was carrying the weight of depression, betrayal, and a body she no longer recognized. So she did something incredibly brave. She stepped onto the cast of Celebrity Fit Club. Nobody expected much from the former Marcia Brady. The producers probably wanted a breakdown. Instead, they got a resurrection. Maureen didn't just participate, she broke the show's record, losing nearly 23% of her body weight. Watching her sweat, grind, and eventually stand proudly on that scale wasn't just about fitness. It was a public exorcism of her demons. She was shedding the physical and emotional armor she had built up to protect herself from the world. For the first time in decades, the audience wasn't cheering for a character, they were cheering for Maureen. She followed that up by venturing into the Australian jungle for "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here" in 2015. Stripped of makeup, scripts, and Hollywood lighting, she was forced to just be herself. Amid the bugs and the mud, she dropped a story that had the tabloids salivating. She revealed she used to date Michael Jackson. But in a town that thrives on scandalous tell-alls, Maureen's version of the story was heartbreakingly pure. She smiled and admitted, "We just held hands and kissed on the cheek." It was a fleeting glimpse of the innocent girl she had never truly been allowed to be. But the jungle also proved that the ghosts of the past are never completely gone. During the show, she bonded with a young Australian comedian, Joel Creasy. When they eventually reunited in Los Angeles for a wild night out, Maureen came home to a furious Michael Cummings. Now, in a lesser marriage, that's a fight about jealousy, but Michael's anger wasn't rooted in control. It was rooted in sheer, unadulterated terror. He knew how easily the glittering nightlife of LA could drag his wife back into the abyss of addiction. He forbade her from seeing her showbiz friends for a while, acting as the human shield she desperately needed. He wasn't punishing her, he was protecting the life they had bled to build. Eventually, Maureen found a way to safely merge her past with her present. When she returned to our screens for nostalgia-driven projects like Dancing with the Stars and a very Brady renovation, something had fundamentally shifted. When the crowds erupted with joy, she didn't cringe. She walked back into that iconic Brady house, not as a prisoner, but as an owner of her own history. She had finally made peace with the ghost in the top left square. As she poignantly reflected, "It took me years to stop hating the name Marcia Brady. Now I just feel grateful, because without her, there wouldn't be me today." Here we are in 2026. As she approaches her 70th birthday, Maureen McCormick stands as a monumental testament to survival. She outlived the studio executives who treated her like a product. She outran the genetic curses of her bloodline, and she beat an addiction that has claimed so many of her peers. She proved that you can be packaged, sold, shattered, and publicly discarded, only to quietly pick up the pieces and build a beautiful, quiet life in the suburbs with a man who loves you for your scars, not your smile. She is no longer just the Brady girl. She is the woman who survived her. Watching Maureen McCormick fight her way out of a Hollywood nightmare just to find a quiet kind of peace makes you realize something profound. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning the applause of millions. It's finally being able to look in the mirror and like the person staring back at you. If Maureen's journey from the depths of addiction to the warmth of a 40-year marriage hit close to home for you, give this video a thumbs up. It tells us that you value these raw, unfiltered truths just as much as we do. I want to hear from you in the comments. Did you ever have to make peace with a part of your past you once tried to run away from? Let's share some wisdom down there.